Hello everyone and welcome to this recorded webinar on Erasmus Key Action 1 Wet Learner and Staff Mobility in preparation for the application deadline on Wednesday the 5th of February 2020 at 11 a.m. UK time. The webinar is aimed at applicants looking to apply for funding under the decentralised strand of Key Action 1 known as Wet Learner and Staff Mobility. The webinar will primarily focus on how to fill out the application form as well as some hints and tips to help you with the application process. So just to give you an overview of what this recording covers, I'll start by giving you a quick introduction to Key Action 1, Mobility for Wet Learners and Staff and what funding is available. The main focus of this session will be the application form. We'll first talk you through what you need to do beforehand, then we will go through the application form together, filling out certain parts, showing you how to use the distance calculator and how to validate the form. Then we will round up with some key points. Finally, we'll mention the next steps and how to contact us for support in the run-up to the deadline. So Key Action 1 in the field of Vocational Education and Training. Key Action 1 provides opportunities for individuals to improve their skills, enhance their employability and gain cultural awareness through transnational mobility. Under Key Action 1, organizations can apply for funding to offer structured study, work experience, job shadowing, training and teaching opportunities to staff and learners. In the VET sector, both learners and staff in vocational education and training, which I'll call VET going forward, can participate in mobility activities. As a basic overview, funding can be used to support apprentices and VET students who are undertaking vocational training within a VET organization, including recent VET graduates within 12 months of their graduation. In respect of staff, funding can be used to support staff engaged in VET activities, including support staff, managers and guidance staff, as well as teachers and trainers working in the sending organisation. VET learners or apprentices involved in initial VET, IVAT, or VET staff trainers involved in continuing VET, CVAT, can undertake their mobility abroad in either a VET college or school, a company, or a combination of both, depending on their needs. IVAT includes full-time students, part-time students, and anyone undertaking an apprenticeship, whereas CVAT includes staff and trainers involved in any form of vocational education or training with the aim of improving or updating their knowledge and skills, or enabling them to continue with their professional development. Projects can be made up of both learner mobility and staff mobility, but you must demonstrate how the two activities fit with the wider objectives of the project. Key Action 1 Mobility for Wet Learners and Staff is managed by the UK National Agency at Ecorus UK. The team promotes the call for proposals, selects successful projects, and monitors them throughout their life cycle. Let's look into opportunities for learners in a bit more detail. Particular to learners, the funding can be used to support apprentices and VET students enrolled on an IVAT program within a VET organisation, apprentices or vocational students who have recently completed their apprenticeships or course. i.e. VET graduates can also benefit from this opportunity as long as they undertake their training placement within 12 months of their graduation. The placement must include work-based learning at a VET organisation, employer or other relevant organisation. Vocational study alone is not permitted. To ensure the quality of the placement, it is recommended that the receiving organisation hosts all or part of the vocational placement rather than sourcing it out to another organisation. The placement must be relevant to and fit well with the course that the student or apprentice is studying. It is important to note that in the ErasmusPro program, vocational learners are defined as those whose studies typically include work-based learning. higher education students are not eligible to benefit from Key Action 1 VET mobilities and should access Erasmus Plus through higher education mobility projects. If you are unsure whether your planned cohort of participants would be eligible under Key Action 1 VET, please contact the National Agency for Support. Learning outcomes should also be formally recognised through the use of EQUAT, Europass or any other means that is appropriate to the target learners. Placements must last a minimum of 2 weeks or 12 days, of which 10 must be working days, and a maximum of 12 months, excluding travel time. Now a few words on accompanying persons. As part of the European Commission's drive to improve the quality of mobility experiences and safeguard vulnerable learners, it is compulsory to include accompanying persons for wet learner mobility projects. This means that each flow of learners must receive a visit from an accompanying person at some point during their mobility. This ensures that learners are properly monitored while on mobility and that any potential issues are picked up. We recommend that you include a minimum of 1 accompanying person per 10 learners. Accompanying persons can also accompany a single learner for the duration of their mobility. For example, if the learner has special needs, accompanying persons are also allowed for staff mobility activities. If a staff member has special needs, however, the inclusion of an accompanying person within a staff mobility must be fully explained in the application form. ErasmusPro is a policy initiative to increase long-term mobility abroad for vocational education and training learners or recent graduates, 3 to 12 months. It responds to calls by the European Parliament as well as companies and other VET stakeholders to increase the quality, the attractiveness and employability of VET learners through long-term work placements abroad. Long-term placements abroad have proven a clear added value, not only to reinforce the general skills acquired during the mobility experiences, but also providing them with an opportunity to acquire job-particular skills. Long-term mobility has advantages not only for boosting the employability of participants through enhanced individual skills, but also as a means to improve the overall performance of the organizations. Both VET providers and companies involved in such practices by developing sustained internationalization strategies while also helping businesses find the right skill they need to increase their competitiveness. To promote Erasmus Pro mobilities in projects, the integration of long-term mobilities forms must be part of the quality criteria against which your application will be assessed, which I will cover later in this webinar. Please see pages 55 to 56 of the 2020 Programme Guide for further information. If you decide to include long-term mobilities in your proposal, you should take care to highlight how such mobilities will be managed. For example, how participants will be prepared, monitored, and mentored for the longer mobility duration as opposed to participants on short-term mobilities of less than 3 months. For example, a participant on a long-term mobility may require more detailed preparation than a participant on a mobility of 2 to 3 weeks, where an accompanying person will be present. The recruitment and selection of participants for long-term mobility would also need to be considered. If you're planning to integrate Erasmus Pro mobilities into your proposal, you can request funding for a short advanced planning visit, APV, for staff involved in the organisation of the Erasmus Pro activities and in a working relation with the sending organisation or consortium member to visit a host partner in order to facilitate interinstitutional cooperation, better prepare the mobilities and ensure their high quality, i.e. in order to arrange the logistics of ErasmusPro mobilities. The eligibility criteria for this is outlined on page 55 of the 2018 Programme Guide and explains that the duration of a visit can be a maximum of 3 working days, excluding travel time. Each APV is limited to 1 participant, i.e. 1 staff member only. Only 1 APV may be carried out per hosting organisation. Further support and guidance is provided within the Key Action 1 VET Guide for applicants. Particularly for VET staff, there is the opportunity to undertake 2 types of mobility activities. The first is teacher training assignments, where staff deliver training in a VET organisation abroad. This also includes hosting a trainer or teacher from a partner organisation to deliver structured training at the applicant organisation or its consortium partners. You can also have staff from your European partner organisation come to the UK under this activity type, so you can host them. The second activity type is staff training. Staff undertake a work placement or job shadowing experience in an enterprise or any other VET organisation abroad. In the case of teaching training assignments, Key Action 1 is open to persons from enterprises, the public sector, and or the civil society organisations, as well as to the typical target group of VET trainers, managers and support staff. The trainer must respond to clearly identified staff development or training needs, or must contribute to your organisation's strategic approach on making your training provision more modern or international. The learning outcomes of the training must also be appropriately recognised and shared widely with others in your organisation. Staff mobility activities can last from 2 days to 2 months, excluding travel time, and must be consecutive. It is important to note that Erasmus Plus funding cannot be accessed by individuals, so an organisation must apply on behalf of the participants it plans to include in the project. For your Key Action 1 VET application to be eligible, you must have at least 1 receiving partner, and you must list all of the proposed partners, receiving and intermediary organisations in the application form, as partners cannot be added at a later date. There are various roles that participating organisations play in the implementation of a VET learner and staff mobility project. I will outline these and the responsibilities that each one should undertake. Firstly, the applicant organisation. This organisation is in charge of applying for the mobility project, and if this is successful, signing and managing the grant agreement and reporting. The applicant can be a single organisation or the coordinator of a national mobility consortium of partner organisations from the same country aimed at sending VET learners and staff on mobilities abroad. The National Mobility Consortium coordinator can also act as a sending organisation. Sending organisations is in charge of selecting VET learners and staff and sending them abroad. This can be the applicant organisation or its partners in a UK consortium, as I mentioned just now. Receiving organisation is in charge of receiving foreign VET learners or staff and offering them a programme of activities or benefiting from a training activity provided by VET staff. We recommend that your receiving organisations host all or part of the placement, as in that way you can better ensure the quality of the training which takes place abroad. If your receiving partner is hosting no part of the vocational placement, you should provide details on their suitable experience and expertise, as well as their links to businesses, industry or training institutions. Finally, an intermediary organisation is one active in the labour market or in the field of VET. It is a partner in a national VET consortium, but is not a sending or receiving organization. Its role may be to share and facilitate the administrative procedures of the sending organizations and to better match apprentice-student profiles with the needs of enterprises and to jointly prepare participants. It is important to link your Key Action 1 project to the overarching European priorities and demonstrate the added value of carrying out your project on a European level. When doing so, it is important to keep the general objective of the Erasmus Plus program in mind, as well as the important features of the program. The general objectives of Erasmus Plus is to contribute to a number of policies, which are those you can see on this slide. The following are important features of the Erasmus Plus program. The Europe 2020 strategy, including the headline Education Target, the strategic framework for European cooperation in education and training, the sustainable development of partner countries in the field of higher education, the renewed framework for European cooperation in the youth field, the objective of developing the European dimension in support, in particular grassroots supports, in line with the EU work plan for support, and the promotion of European values in accordance with Article 2 of the Treaty on the European Union, which include human dignity, freedom, democracy, and equality. The important features of Erasmus Plus are detailed in Part A of the program guide and include recognition of skills and multilingualism. Please look through them carefully in your own time. Please also have a look at the particular objectives for the field of education and training from page 29 to page 32 of the program guide. So now I'm going to be covering more important information about preparing and submitting your application. Once you have decided on your Key Action 1 VET project idea, you have found partners and thought about how to address different European priorities, you will need to ensure that you have obtained an OID for your organization before applying. An OID is a 9-digit organization identification number which is unique to your organization and will help you complete the application form. OIDs have replaced PICs, which used to be registered on the European Commission's participant portal. Since October 2019, organizations participating or wishing to participate in the Erasmus Plus or European Solidarity Corps action managed by national agencies have had to manage their organization's information through a new registered system. This new Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps organization platform makes it easier for organizations to register and participate with less information requested as part of the registration process. If your organization has already participated in any Erasmus Plus or European Solidarity Corps actions managed by a national agency and you already have a PIC, then you do not have to register again for an OID. If you haven't got a PIC or OID, you need to follow a 2-stage registration process. However, before doing so, please double check that your organization definitely doesn't have one. We recommend that you ask colleagues at your organization in case someone else has already created a PIC OID. Alternatively, you can check whether your organization is already registered through your EU login account by clicking on the Organization tab from the drop-down menu and using the search facility or online at the web page listed on this slide. If your organization already has a PIC, you should use that one and not create a OID, as having multiple registrations for the same organization will create problems. All PICs have now been converted to an OID and can be found using the web page mentioned previously. If you need to create an OID, these are the two steps that you need to follow. First, you will need to register on EU Login. This platform of the European Commission was formerly known as ECAS. EU Login is a point for user authorization to a wide range of Commission tools. The registration process is really simple, and you can download a guide off our website, which will talk you through how to do this. The guide can be downloaded for the Before You Apply section of the UK website, and you find the link to it on the handout. You will then need to obtain an OID through the European Commission's organisation platform. The organisation platform is the single entry point for the electronic administration of Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps projects, as well as projects funded under other EU programmes. After starting the registration process, you will be prompted to provide information about your organisation, as well as upload documents related to your organisation. These documents are needed to prove the legal status and financial capacity of your organisation, and it is essential that the information on these documents matches the information you've input on the platform. If you're creating an OID, make sure you register on the correct platform. The link provided in the previous slide and on our website is for the Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps organisation platform, which is the correct one for Erasmus Plus projects. If you were to simply search the internet, you might come across other platforms, such as the Research Participant Portal, which is not correct for Erasmus Plus. Please be aware that all of your partners will also need to have obtained an OID and have uploaded all of the necessary supporting documents to the organisation platform before you can submit your application. This is because the details of all participating organisations will be pulled into the application form from the organisation platform and cannot be completed manually. We'll see how this actually works in a minute. Finally, if you want to apply as the coordinator of a national mobility consortium, you will also need to download the partner mandate templates from our website and have each of your UK consortium partners complete. Each partner mandates must be signed by both parties. Please make sure that all the information such as the name of the organisation, address and legal representative on the partner mandate is identical to the information in the application form. If there are any inconsistencies, partner mandates will not be accepted by the UK National Agency. For further guidance on registering your organisation, please visit the Before You Apply section of our website. After developing your project idea and completing the OID process, if applicable, you can move on to the application form. The application form for 2020 Key Action 1 VET projects is a web form. The web form must be submitted online by the applicant organisation by the deadline of 5th of February 2020. Please keep in mind that this is 11 a.m. UK time, as the deadline for applications is 12 p.m. midday Brussels time. To open the application, you need to click on the link to the Erasmus Plus Forms website, which takes you to the EU login screen. The Erasmus Plus Forms website can be accessed via the link off the screen. You will also find this on our website under the Apply for WET funding page. Log in using your EU login details. You will then be redirected to the home page that looks like the one you see on the screen. You will notice 5 main tabs named Field of Opportunity, which will show all key actions from where you will choose the appropriate application form. You will also notice the tab My Applications at the top of the page. Here you should see any applications which you have already started or finalized. Please click on Wet tab, and once you've identified the correct application form, select Apply. Once you have clicked Apply, a welcome message will appear. Please read this carefully as it gives you important information on some of the form's functions. Each time you click on Apply, a new draft of the application will be created and saved here. Therefore, if you have multiple application drafts saved, ensure you open and edit the correct one. The application is saved automatically every 2 seconds. There is therefore no option to save the form, and you must ensure you are connected to the internet at all times. Please check that you're working on the correct Key Action 1 application form. For Key Action 1 web projects, you should check that your forms correspond with the information you can see on this slide. On the top right-hand corner of each page, the form will state 2020 as the call year and Key Action 102 or 116 as the action type, which are for Vocational Education and Training mobilities. Then on the first page in section B of the correct e-form will state that the key action is learning mobility of individuals. Then again, the action type is Vocational Education and Training. The call year as 2020, the round will be 1, and the submission deadline will be 5th of February 2020 at noon. Please note that you should read the UK National Agency's Key Action 1 wet guide for applicants when completing the web form, as this provides further guidance, hints and tips that are additional to this webinar. This guidance can be downloaded from the UK National Agency's website. The 2020 Programme Guide is also a very useful resource that you can use to help you when applying, which can be found under Application Resources on our website. You must ensure you have validated all sections of the application form before submitting. You should also ensure that all annexes are attached before attempting submission. You need to check that the annexes are within the maximum 10 megabyte size for each file up to a maximum of 10 files and are in the correct file formats accepted by the web form, which are listed in our guide for applicants. The most important annexes which are mandatory are the Declaration of Honour. It needs to be printed, completed in full and hand-signed by the project's legal representative named within the application. This is the most important annex, as without this we are not able to forward the application to assessment. This document will be a PDF, so please ensure that you have the most up-to-date version of Adobe and are able to download this. Grant applications over €750,000, with the exception of public sector bodies and international organisations, must be accompanied by the most recent audit report produced by external auditor. If the report is not ready at the time of application, then we can accept this at a later stage. If you experience problems with attaching annexes after having checked these aspects, you can email them to erasmusplus@chorus.com before the deadline of 11 a.m. 5th of February 2020, clearly stating which application form they relate to by providing the application hash code, and also tell us your organization's details and project name. However, please only do this as an exception and ensure you have followed all the available guidance first. You will need to ensure that you are connected to the internet in order to submit your application. If you experience technical problems which you are unable to resolve, you need to follow the alternative submission procedure, which we have just talked about. For full details regarding the National Agency's alternative submission procedure when experiencing technical issues, please consult the National Agency's 2020 Key Action 1 wet guide for applicants. I'll now hand over to Christina to go through the application form. Please note that the application form we will be running through is the Key Action 1021. We will not be running through the one for wet mobility charter holders, as this is much more streamlined and would not be necessary.
Right, here is the application form. As I go through it, I will use the guide on the left to go between the relevant sections of the form. I will concentrate on hints and tips for each section based on previous application rounds rather than describing all the information needed, and I will then concentrate on the sections dealing with project activities and budget, showing how these link to each other. I will give you a brief introduction to the key features of the web form. Each section of the application form is displayed in the menu on the left-hand side. Once all the mandatory fields in the given section have been completed correctly, the section will be marked with a green tick icon. If there is any information missing in a section, or if it's not all the application rules have been respected, a section will be marked with a red exclamation triangle icon. Most individual questions will be marked in the same way to make it easy to identify and fix any issue. Pre-filled sections of the form, such as the project end date here, are in grey and cannot be amended in the web form. Cells that don't have red next to them should be completed, where possible and applicable, such as the project acronym here. Mandatory sections of the form are in red. You must complete these sections to be able to submit the web form. As you can see in the first section of the form, we must provide the language used to fill out the form, which in this case should always be English when submitting the form to the UK National Agency. You can see that we must use the drop-down box to select this. The drop-down feature can be found throughout the form and in some cases appears when you click on the red cell or green cell, for example, with the start date. If I click on this cell, the drop-down appears and we can select a start date from the calendar that appears. Please note that the form automatically fills the project start date as the 1st of June 2020. You can change this if you wish, but the start date for your 2020 project must be between the 1st of June 2020 and the 31st December 2020. Please note that the national agency suggests a start date later than June, as it takes at least 4 months from application deadline for your grant agreement and any pre-financing payments to be made. When deciding your start date, also consider when you will be able to recruit participants and availability of your staff within your own and other participating organizations. You must then select the project duration. Ensure that the project duration selected is realistic for the project you are applying for. This is the total duration for your whole project, not just for the proposed mobilities, and will need to encompass all project-related activities from promotion through to evaluation and dissemination. Once the duration is input, you can see that the end date of the project automatically populates. In the same section, you must select UK01 British Council in partnership with the Chorus UK British Council, found at the bottom of the drop-down menu. Now, I will move on to the participating organization section by clicking on the title on the left here. Here are some hints and tips. If you're applying as a consortium, select Yes from the drop-down box. This will bring up an extra box here, Consortium, where you enter your consortium members. If you're also involved in other consortia, please select Yes from this box and explain further about this. Remember that all members of the consortium must be from the same program country and need to be identified at the time of applying for a grant. A consortium must comprise of at least 3 vet organizations, so that would be you and at least 2 other UK organizations. Please also make sure that all consortium members have an eligible legal form at the application stage. Please note that once you have selected Yes to applying on behalf of a consortium, there are extra questions specific to being in a consortium and running the project that will appear throughout the form that you may not see here today. Remember, when you put in any OIDs, the information will automatically populate from the information in the organization platform. Here, I've already entered the OID for a test applicant organization. It automatically loads the legal name and the country. In order to check the applicant organization information, click the organization and you are taken to this screen. Check details, and if you notice any which are incorrect for you or your partners, they will need to be corrected in the organizational information platform. Enter details needed for the profile part of this section. You can see here that you need to add a contact person and a legal representative as associated persons. To do this, you should click on the button with 3 horizontal lines and select Person's Details. If you wish to add more contacts to the project from the applicant organization, you can select Add Associated Person. This is recommended so that your organization can remain in contact with the UK national agency in cases where the preferred contact person is absent or unavailable. A tip. A better quality application will be specific and detailed in all questions answered in the form. Try to use SMART goals when completing the application form. For this question on background and experience, explain how your organization's previous experience of delivering projects or activities has built the skills and knowledge needed for the activities you propose in the application, and name the key persons who will be delivering the project and their skills. To go back to the participating organization screen, you can click on the link at the top of the page. To add hosting partners organizations, enter the organization's OID. If your hosting organization does not have an OID, you can manually enter their details. We strongly recommend that hosting partner details are entered via the use of the organization's OID. Make sure that all the details are correctly filled for your hosting partners, including type of organization. To add more partners, click the Add Hosting Partner button. For your application to be eligible, you will need to enter at least one hosting partner. I will enter the OID of another hosting organization here. UK host consortium partners are added in the same way, and the option to add their details will be visible only if yes is selected to the question, are you applying on behalf of a mobility consortium above? Now, let's click to the next section, European Development Plan. Before we go into details on this page, you will see that at the bottom of any boxes that require you to explain something, there is a count that shows how many characters are written in the box and the character limit. For example, here, we can see that we have used 4 characters out of the available. Please be mindful that word counts may have changed since the last time you completed an application. The purpose of the European Development Plan is to ensure that the planned mobility activities are relevant both to the needs of the individual participants and of your organization as a whole. It is also to ensure that the activities will have a positive impact on the quality of teaching and learning provided by the applicant organization or consortium partners here in the UK. Finally, when completing this section, you should demonstrate that the proposed activities tie in with the organizations or consortiums wider European and international strategy. Please see the relevant Key Action 1 VET Guide for Applicant, considering the VET application you are completing, for more information on completing this section. Please note that you can select up to 3 of the most relevant topics from the drop-down menu. You can add topics by clicking on them and delete them by clicking on them again. This feature can be found in other parts of the web form as well. Here are some hints and tips. Make sure you show a clear link between your project and the priorities and objectives of Key Action 1, which are on page 29 to 32 of the 2020 Program Guide. You should also think about which of the general objectives for vocational education and training are relevant. These are listed in Part B of the 2020 Program Guide. You should explain the specific needs or issues your project will address based on a genuine needs analysis which you or other have carried out in relation to the participants and organizations you plan to involve. Describe the specific needs of your participants and organizations and show how your project will respond to these. It is very important that you demonstrate how the learners and staff you will select to take part in the activities will benefit directly from the project. Moving on, in the project management section, you should explain clearly how you will ensure that the project and the grant are managed effectively and transparently in order to deliver the planned objectives and activities to a high standard and within the time frame and budget available, including how you and your hosting partners will work together to achieve this. Detail the communication methods you will use and with your partners and how you will ensure that roles and responsibilities of each participating organizations are clear. Describe how you will address practical and logistical matters like travel, accommodation, insurance, safety of participants, visas if necessary, and social security and others. If applicable, you should also describe how you will use any of our online platforms like Erasmus Plus Project Results Platform as part of your project. Moving on to the next session, the activities. This section is a really important part of the application as this feeds directly into the budget summary section. So the information input here needs to be accurate and realistic for your project. The activities are no longer entered in flows, but instead split up into activity type, as you can see in the list of activities box. And you should only enter activity for the types you want. If you are applying for ErasmusPro and you wish to carry out an advanced plan visit, this is where it should be recorded. Activity description. The question refers to the hosting partners and therefore receiving countries, and how this relationship will be or has been formed. Make sure it is clear what your hosting partner expertise are and why you're working with them. A strong application will be as detailed as possible in this section. Once you have entered participants into one of the activities below, additional questions will be visible in this section, depending on whether your project includes learners or staff. Please select yes or no here, depending if your project will involve an intermediary organization. Moving on to the list of activities. The activities that are listed here are Mobility of VET Learners, ErasmusPro, which are the long-term mobility option, Advanced Plan Visits, this can only be requested to support ErasmusPro mobility. Teaching and training assignments abroad. This is the activity you should select if you're planning on hosting in the UK as well as sending staff abroad to train. Staff training abroad. This table will update as activities are added. I will now demonstrate how this works. I'm going to click on Mobility of VET Learners activity type. First, you need to fill in how many participants for this activity require a grant and how many do not. Participants here are referring to learners and not accompanied persons. Funding for accompanied persons can be claimed further down the form. Please also remember to fill in which of those participants will be hosted by schools or by companies. Please note, if any of these sections are not correctly filled out, for example, I have 20 participants but say 19 are going to schools and 0 are going to companies, the form will come up with an error message, like this one. Next, we will move on to individual support. In order to find out which group your countries come under, you can hover over the question marks next to the groups. It is important you select the correct group since they each have different daily grant. I am searching for France, which comes under Group 2. Enter the number of participants necessary. If participants under the same activity type are going to multiple receiving countries, all of them can be recorded on the same table. You then need to fill in the average amount of days per participant. Remember, for vet learner mobilities, it needs to be between 10 and 91 days, including travel. Please note that you can request additional individual support for up to 1 travel day before and 1 after the activity, 2 travel days maximum. Your estimated grant for individual support will appear on the bottom right of this table. Under this table, there is an option to request individual support for accompanied persons. When Yes is selected, a new table appears in which you can record the country group and the average duration of days for accompanied persons. Just a reminder, accompanied persons are to be entered here only. Please do not enter them as a vet staff mobility, as this would generate incorrect budget information, which could have a negative impact on claims throughout the course of the project if approved. We can now move on to travel. In order to fill this section out, you will need to use the Commission's online distance calculator. A link to this is provided in the 2020 Key Action 1 Vet Guide for applicants. The distance is from cities and towns, so choose the nearest one to your head office and the head office of your host partners. The distance that comes up corresponds with a band, which you will need to use to input the number of persons next to. Remember that this includes your accompanied person too. This will then automatically populate the corresponding travel unit cost in the budget section. This is a contribution towards the return journey costs. Please ensure that you put the right band, as this will be checked during the assessment stage and if incorrect could affect the quality of the application. So in this case, we are opening the distance calculator and inputting the relevant cities. This shows us that the distance is 805.48 kilometers, which falls into the 501,999 kilometers band. The distance calculator works by you inputting the town or city that will be the point of departure and arrival for the mobility. Our test organization is based in Birmingham, our point of departure, and the receiving organization is in L'Église-aux-Bois in France, our arrival point. As you can see, as I started to type the name of the location, the distance calculator suggested the destinations. Once both cities have been selected, it provides the distance in kilometer, and this is the number which dictates which distance band you need to select. If you do not wish to claim any costs for travel, you can leave this section with 0. If you do not input less persons than you have earlier in the form, a yellow warning will appear to ensure that this is intentional. Therefore, please take care when filling out this section of the form. I'll now switch back to the application form to input this information from the distance calculator. Next to the 501,999 kilometer band, I am going to put 23. 20 learners and 3 accompanying persons. Again, the estimated grant total will appear in the bottom right corner of the table. Underneath this table, there is the option to request exceptional costs for expensive travel. This may be requested if you're traveling from or to somewhere that is remotely located. Exceptional costs for expensive travel cannot be used in combination with a normal travel grant for the same person. Therefore, you can request either the standard unit cost or the expensive travel cost. Please remember that for expensive travel costs of participants, the EU grant will cover up to the 80% of the actual cost. A justification must be provided to show that the standard funding given per distance band would not cover at least 70% of the travel costs per participant. Be careful and note that in the application form you should enter the grant amount requested, corresponding to the percentage allowed. So you need to enter maximum the 80% of the actual cost you have calculated. So for example here, if I wanted €100, I would input 80. More information on this can be found in the 2020 Programme Guide and in the 2020 Key Action 1 VET Guide for applicants. Linguistic support. There is only available for VET learners on mobilities lasting 19 days to 12 months. Here, you will need to indicate how many participants will use the languages, which are offered through the online linguistic support, commonly referred to as OLS. If the project is approved, then these participants will need to undertake language assessments before and after the mobility abroad through the OLS. You will be awarded no unit costs, as support will be provided via the OLS. Funding from the organizational support should be used to absorb any additional costs incurred. Unit cost funding may be available for linguistic support offered to participants prior to departure or during the activity where placements lasting between 19 days to 12 months and not using any of the OLS languages. Participants should have some language training provided as part of their preparation activities. Once you input the number of participants using these languages, the application form will allocate a unit cost of €150 per participant. This is payable to enable you to arrange linguistic preparation, for example, hiring a language tutor. For placements less than 19 days in any language, no unit cost is payable nor OLS licenses from organization support should be used to absorb any cost incurred to prepare participants in the language which they will train or work. For more information on the OLS platform, you can follow the link that is here within the application form. Since none of my mobilities are for 19 days or longer, I will leave this as 0. Right at the bottom of this page, there is the budget summary. Please check that this is correct and for this activity type before moving on. To go back to the list of activities, you can scroll back up to the top of the page and click List of Activities. Once back on this screen, a new question will appear under Activities Description because a learner mobility activity has been added. This question should cover the activities that you're going to organize, which an estimate of the dates different activities will take place. I now want to add some ErasmusPro participants. Our test receiving organizations are based in France and Finland. Finland is under Group 1 and France Group 2. Since this is an ErasmusPro mobility, the minimum and maximum amount of days are different to our previous activities, and mobilities must be between 90 and 368 days, including travel. Again, make sure that the grant estimate given seems realistic for your project. Add accompany persons if necessary. Moving on to travel again, the receiving organization is the same as before, so we can enter our participants into the 501,999 kilometers band, since we already know it's 805.48. However, our second receiving organization is based in Helsinki. You can see that the distance calculated is 1,844.7 kilometers. I will then input the number of participants I want to travel for under this band, which this time has included my accompany persons. The linguistic support. Seeing as this mobility is long enough to apply for linguistic support, I will input the participants into the online linguistic assessment, since the languages that they will be working with are Finnish and French, and both are supported by the OLS. I will also request enough OLS licenses that can be used to enable language learning during the mobility. As I have ErasmusPro mobilities, I am able to request funding for an advanced planning visit. I would like one APV for my ErasmusPro mobility to France and one for Finland. The maximum amount of time allowed to be requested is 3 days, excluding 2 days travel. So I have requested 5 to cover travel too. I don't need accompany persons for this. We already know from the distance calculator that both L'Église-aux-Bois and Helsinki are in the 501,999 kilometers band. Check the budget summary and all the boxes have been answered correctly, and move back to the activities list. Finally, I want to add some participants to the teaching training assignments abroad. Again, input the number of participants that are relevant for this activity type, excluding accompany persons. The receiving organization is in Helsinki again. This falls into Group 1. You must put a duration between 2 and 62 days. I have chosen 10 as my average duration. We can now move on to travel. If this was a different city, we would check with the distance calculator. However, from previous activities we have entered, we already know that Helsinki falls into the 501,999 kilometers travel distance band. Check if you need to request any expensive travel costs and check the budget summary. Once back on this screen, a new question will have appeared since a staff activity was added. This question requests information regarding the activities that will take place and the estimated timeline of activities. Again, it is advisable that you are as detailed as possible here. Organizational support is then calculated at the bottom of the screen. This budget is only for participants that are not accompanied people. Organizational support is used for the organizational management and implementation of your mobilities or main activities. For more information on the organizational support rates and how it is worked out, please see the 2020 Program Guide. Some general advice on the activity section. Explain how the activities proposed in this application for learners and/or for staff fit with other programs or activities you deliver. This will help the assessors understand what needs and expertise your organization has and make it easier to see the potential impact of the project of your organization. When entering average durations, make sure to look at the total number of days you are requesting to ensure that this is realistic for your organization to deliver within the project duration you have selected. Moving now on to the participants section. Here are some hints and tips. Be specific about who your participants will be and how you will select them. For example, if you're applying for VET learner mobility, include information on the VET course of study that your learners will be undertaking, specifying the subjects and level of qualification, and how the placement will support this learning. If you are selecting staff for mobility, include information about how you will select the most relevant staff members. We found this information unclear in unsuccessful applications in previous calls. Similarly, if you're including ErasmusPro activities, you must specify which targeted participants are suitable for long-term mobility activities, as well as how you will select them. If you're including long-term and short-term mobilities, you should describe how the targeted participants and the selection for each type of mobility differ. Explain what recruitment and selection processes you and your partners will undertake. For instance, state how many participants you will involve and how the processes will ensure the most suitable participants are selected, while ensuring a fair process. In the case of staff mobility, you need to carefully detail the training that staff will deliver or receive, whether your organization is sending or hosting staff. You should demonstrate how the training program ties with the needs analysis and your organization strategy. We recommend that you annex any specific materials relating to the proposed training to the application form to strengthen your case. Make sure that the placements match participants' training or professional development needs as stated in this section. The participating organizations should work closely together to match the selected participants with a suitable vocational placement. If applicable, address how you will ensure participants are eligible under the rules of Erasmus+. For example, in case of recently graduated VET learners, how you will ensure their placement takes place in the eligible time period, which is within 12 months of their graduation. Check this section to make sure that the total number of participants input under each activity type are correct. In the learners part, please enter the numbers of recent graduates, apprentices, viewers opportunities, and learners with special needs. All boxes must have a number input, and this number can also be 0. If any staff going on mobilities have special needs, please input this here. If there are any participants, learners of staff, who do have special needs that you wish to request further funding for, it is important you input this here so that you can request funding under the special costs section. This will be explained later. The next two boxes refer to preparation, monitoring, and support of participants during the project. The specific activities mentioned in this section will depend on the objectives and activities of your particular project and the needs of your participants. However, they will include some standard elements, such as the language and the cultural preparation for participants, mentoring and support, especially for learner mobilities, practical and logistical orientation, any technical or vocationally specific training or preparation before particular activities, and agreeing learning needs and objectives with participants. Under the preparation question, you will need to describe the pedagogical, cultural, and linguistic preparation that learners and staff will receive to ensure that they will be ready to live and work in a different environment and in a different country. You will need to identify whether it is the same for all participants, if participants are on short-term and long-term mobilities. Be sure to explain how and when this preparation will take place and who it will involve. Please remember, for learners completing mobilities which last between 19 days and 12 months, the European Commission's online linguistic support tool should be used as an online platform to support language learning for the languages it supports. Address how you plan to handle risks or difficulties. For example, what processes will you use to handle conflict resolution within the partnership and to prevent selected participants dropping out of the mobilities? Under the monitoring and support question, you need to explain what monitoring activities will take place to support your participants and who will carry this out and evaluate the participants' progress. Examples could be meetings between learners and accompanied persons, evening during a short-term mobilities, participants' logbooks, and regular Skype catch-ups between a staff participant and their line manager back in the UK. Monitoring for a long-term ErasmusPro activity may be completely different than to a short-term mobility, so please ensure you make this distinction. If APVs are being requested, information about how the visit will be used to prepare for long-term mobilities should be included in this section. For learning outcomes, detail what is expected to be a result of the project in terms of learning outcomes. Your learning outcomes must also be clearly linked to the aims of your project and relevant to the needs of your participants. This means that they must be agreed with both the learners and staff of the sending and receiving organizations. At the bottom of this page, there is a section concerning the validation of learning outcomes of participants. Participants' training and the skills acquired during the placement should be recognized, and you should consider involving European partners in the validation process. You will need to detail within the application which European and/or national instruments or certificates will be used to validate the competencies acquired by participants. You can select the certifications with the drop-down menu. As a minimum, you should use the Europass, but you should also consider incorporating ECVAT, the European Credit Transfer System for VET. ECVAT allows you to validate the skills that participants gain while abroad against the knowledge, skills and competencies required to achieve a qualification at home. We can now continue on to special costs. Firstly, this section allows you to request any special needs support. That is, any cost that your organization or any partners will incur in relation to participants whose physical, mental, or health-related situation is such that their participation in the project would not be possible without extra financial support. For example, special needs funding could fund specialist equipment that one of your participants will need specifically to participate in the mobility activities. Special needs support is calculated on an actual cost basis and will be assessed on a case-by-case basis. Therefore, it is important that you make it clear in the description and justification box what items you need and the cost breakdown. You should also detail the inclusion of special needs participants in the main narrative of the application. Please note, the number of participants with special needs should be identified in the participant section first to allow costs to be added here. Secondly, exceptional costs are to be budgeted as actual costs, and you need to clearly state in the description and justification box why you need these items and the cost breakdown. Under Key Action 1 Mobility Project for VET learners and staff, you can request exceptional cost funding for 3 areas. Additional costs to support the participation of learners with fewer opportunities, excluding costs for travel and individual support. Costs connected to providing a financial guarantee if the UK National Agency asks for it. Even though this does not need to be entered in this section, it is useful to know that exceptional costs for expensive travel are also classed as exceptional costs. As I explained previously, this means financial support can be claimed if you are able to justify that the normal travel unit cost given per distance band does not cover at least 70% of the travel costs for participants. If awarded, this then replaces the normal travel grant. Please note that if you request this funding, it should be entered under the corresponding activity type in the activities section. Please note that only a certain percentage of the exceptional cost you are budgeting for will be covered by the EU funding. For instance, the EU grant will only cover 75% of the actual cost of financial guarantees. More information on this is provided in the 2020 Programme Guide and in the Key Action 1 VET Guide for applicants. Next, you can move on to follow up. Here are some hints and tips. Be as specific as possible about the impact of the project in addressing the needs and objectives you have identified earlier in the application. The UK National Agency created a model to help you think about impact called Impact Plus, and the link to this is provided in the 2020 Key Action 1 VET Guide for applicants. You need to describe the expected impacts on individual participants, the participating organizations, the target groups they work, and any other relevant stakeholders. Do not forget to specify the impact of the project at local, regional, national, European, and international level. Give specific details on the evaluation methods and indicators of achievement, both qualitative and quantitative, you plan to use in order to assess whether and to what extent your project has achieved its objectives and results. You should attach numerical targets to quantitative indicators whether possible and explain who will be looking after this task. Don't forget, your evaluation activities should also consider the learning outcomes and how the project has contributed to addressing the overall aims of Key Action 1. You need to show you have carefully planned how you will make the results of your project known and mention what messages you want to share, what activities you'll undertake to do this, and when. You should be as clear as possible about who you will target with your dissemination activities. Plan for these activities to take place throughout your project lifetime and not just at the end. Have a look at Annex 2 of the 2020 Programme Guide, which provides practical guidance on the sharing of results of your project. In previous call years, this section of the application form has been identified as the weakest. The impact and dissemination section of the award criteria is worth 30 points out of a maximum of the 100 which can be awarded. Please refer to the applicable 2020 VET Guide for applicants for more support on completing this section. The UK Erasmus Plus website also has lots of information and resources to support you with the dissemination and impact. Getting the budget right is an important part of the application. It is important that you have carefully considered and justified the budget requested. It is important to be aware that if the project is approved, the applicant organization will receive the grant and will be responsible for distributing it amongst the partners to ensure the effective delivery of the project. There is no maximum grant amount for a Key Action 1 VET learner and staff mobility project. However, you should ensure that the budget requested meets the needs of the activities plan and is realistic. All budget costings are for sending participants except under the activity teaching and training assignments abroad only, where you can claim costs to host a teacher or trainer to provide structured training to VET staff. There are two funding mechanisms under Key Action 1 VET Mobility. Unit costs are a set amount per participant, which is a contribution toward the cost, and on the other hand, actual cost, which means that you will receive funding for how much you actually plan to spend. Actual costs are used for the budget heading exceptional costs and special needs support and can be fully or partially reimbursed. The budget categories for a Key Action 1 VET learners and staff mobility project are travel, individual support, organization support, linguistic support, which is not available for VET staff mobilities, special needs support if applicable, and exceptional costs, including exceptional costs for expensive travel if applicable. As you can see, the information has been pre-filled based on the information we already entered in the activity section. Under travel, individual support and organizational support, the budget is calculated on a unit cost basis. Your request for the funding in travel should reflect the main activities you detailed in the activity section. Next, you will need to check the request for individual support. This is a contribution to the subsistence costs of participants during their activity. Costs are calculated on a unit cost basis per participant depending on the type of activity, the duration and the country where the activity will take place. If the estimated grant given doesn't look correct, this must be amended back in the activities section. You need to check the request for organizational support, which is the grant to be used for the organization, management and implementation of your mobilities or main activities. Once again, this information has been pre-filled from the activity detail section. You will need to check here and that the pre-filled information is correct, and if not, amend the activities section. Special needs. If you would like to request funding under this budget heading, ensure that this has the correct estimated grant, as this is classed as an actual cost. Exceptional costs. Again, if you entered costs for this budget heading under the special cost section, please check that these costs are accurate. The section can be amended if not. Next, you can see the budget summary per activity type. This table breaks down the estimated grant for travel and individual support per activity type. Once again, please ensure that the estimated grant here is realistic and accurate. Linguistic support. This is a summary of what linguistic support has been requested. Remember, if you have requested the OLS assessment or OLS linguistic support for VET learner participants with mobility duration of 19 days to 12 months. This accounts for no monetary grant. Only working languages that aren't covered by the European Commission's linguistic platform are eligible for a linguistic support grant. To reiterate a general piece of advice on the budget, make sure you have clearly described the main activities of your project and that the budget you requested is correct and consistent with your description. Budget requests can only be accepted if it's clear what the grant is being requested for. Remember, the Erasmus Plus grant is regarded as a contribution to your project costs and may not cover the total cost of your project. When you're happy with your budget and what you are requesting, you can move on to the project summary section. This section asks you to provide a summary of your project. This summary will be used by the Commission and the UK National Agency in their publications, and we also feed into the Erasmus Plus project results platform, so it should be written in clear, plain English, avoiding any technical or sector-specific jargon to ensure that it can be understood by the general public. Ensure to include, as a minimum, information regarding the context of your project, its activities, your participants, a description of the planned activities, and address the expected results and potential for long-term benefits. Please then check this section carefully and make sure this information is absolutely correct, so you can make any arrangements to the application if necessary. Please also use this opportunity to check that all the information on the participating organizations is correct, including applicant, hosting, and consortium partners. If any changes need to be made, these can be done in the participating organization section of the application form. Now on to Annexes section. Compulsory annexes are the signed Declaration of Honour, and if only you are applying on behalf of a UK mobility consortium, you also have to annex the mandates for your UK consortium partners, signed by both the consortium members and the applicant. For grant applications over €750,000, with the exception of public sector bodies and international organizations, these must be accompanied by the most recent audit report produced by an external auditor. If the report is not ready at the time of application, then we can accept this at a later stage. The Declaration of Honour is the first box on this page. This is your organization's statement that all information in the application is correct to the best of your knowledge, there is no conflict of interest, and you will take part in the dissemination and exploitation activities if required. It expresses a commitment to the activities you have outlined in the application form. The legal representative of the applicant organization must print the declaration, read it carefully, complete the declaration section by hand, and sign it. Please note that the national ID and organization stamp are not required in the UK applicants. The signed declaration then needs to be scanned and attached as an annex before the application form is submitted. Your project application will be deemed ineligible without the declaration, so please do not forget it. Please also make sure that the date is before or on the submission deadline. The mandate template can also be downloaded from here. The information in the mandate template is taken directly from the information on the participating organization section. If any information is incorrect, you will need to be amended here or on the Erasmus Plus and European Solidarity Corps organization platform. Mandates needs to be signed and dated in original by the partner organization and the applicant. Electronic or scanned signatures will not be accepted. You are also able to attach other relevant annexes such as training needs analysis, which would be good supporting information should you plan on hosting a training activity, and a sample work program. A hidden tip here is to keep it concise. We expect all the information that is key to the quality and content of your project to be included within the main body of the application form. The final section is the checklist. Please make sure that you tick each box. This can be used as a prompt before you submit your application to ensure that your application is eligible. Read this section carefully to ensure that all information and annexes that are applicable to your project are included in the form. Also, please remember to read the data protection notice, as this is important. Once all sections are completed, they will appear green on the left-hand side. This means the application is ready to submit. There are 4 headings underneath the checklist. The 2 most important are guidelines. This can be very useful when filling out the application form and offer further guidance if you need it. and sharing. The European Commission has decided to allow this form to be shared with others if you wish. This can be useful for projects to allow more than one person to contribute to the application. I will now hand back to Bushra, who will talk you through the rest of the presentation.
Once we have received your application, we do some preliminary checks on your application. Your application will not be deemed eligible and will not go forward to assessment if it does not meet any of the eligibility criteria specified in the 2020 Programme Guide for Key Action 1 VET Mobility Projects. The relevant VET eligibility information can be found on pages 53 through to 55. I've included some examples of not meeting eligibility criteria on this slide, but please remember that this is not a fully comprehensive list. Your application won't be eligible if your planned activities are not eligible under Key Action 1 VET. For example, you submit a Key Action VET application to send primary school teachers to France so they can learn French to teach primary school children, or you submit two applications as a single UK applicant. You can submit one application as a single applicant and a different one as the lead of a national UK consortium. Your application won't go through to qualitative assessment if your organisation as the applicant has no legal personality in the UK. In the programme guide, it is stated that applicant must be any public or private organisation or its subsidiary branch active in the field of VET or the lead of a national VET consortium. Please be aware that if you apply, you will have to be able to evidence that your VET organisation is legally registered in the UK and has a separate legal personality, which means there is a legal distinction between the owner and the business. Your application won't be eligible if you submit it after 11 a.m. UK time on 5th of February 2020. We recommend that you submit your application in advance of the deadline in case you experience any technical difficulties. Please make sure that you read the 2020 Programme Guide and the National Agency Guidance available on our website for further details on the eligibility requirements before you submit your application. Once the UK National Agency is happy that your application is eligible, it will be assessed by external experts against the award criteria published on page 55 to 56 of the 2020 Programme Guide. From this slide, you can see there are three award criteria. The application can score a maximum of 100 points. In order for your application to be considered for funding, an application must score a minimum of 60 points in total and must receive at least half of the maximum points for each award criteria. Each criterion has sub-points which you need to pay attention to. So please read more about these in the 2020 Programme Guide and in our guide for applicants. We also recommend that you look at the 2019 guide for Erasmus Plus assessors to see more detail how your application will be considered during its assessment. All of the relevant links to these documents can be found on the Erasmus Plus website. As explained earlier, the inclusion of Erasmus Plus Pro activities, mobilities of 3 months to 12 months, will be assessed under the three award criteria. Please note that as part of the assessment process, the national agency will also check that the requested budget is in line with the funding rules set out in Part B of the Programme Guide, pages 60 through to 62. If these rules are not respected, your requested budget may be reduced if your application is successful. During the qualitative assessment process, applications will also be assessed against other relevant areas. Applicants will need to comply with the exclusion criteria, which can be found on pages 251 to 253 of the 2020 Programme Guide. These criteria include situations such as being bankrupt or participating in criminal activities. An applicant will be excluded from participating within the call for proposals or will be rejected from the award procedure if it is found in one of the situations described within the criteria. The selection criteria includes operational capacity and financial capacity. In terms of operational capacity, applicants need to demonstrate they have the capacity to successfully deliver Erasmus Plus projects and administrate them in accordance with the grant agreement and the 2020 programme guide. The assessment of organisational capacity will also consider elements such as the roles of staff involved in delivering planned project and the past history of the applicant in delivering EU-funded projects. An outcome of this analysis may be that the UK National Agency may limit the number of live projects an organisation manages at any one time if it doesn't evidence sufficient organisational capacity to successfully deliver them. In terms of financial capacity, Erasmus Plus projects are co-funded and Erasmus Plus grants may not cover all costs. Projects must be delivered and reported using only a pre-financing payment or advance. Therefore, applicants must have stable and sufficient sources of funding to complete the project. The UK National Agency doesn't complete a financial capacity check on public bodies and international organisations or where the grant doesn't exceed €60,000. Grant applications over €750,000, with the exception of public sector bodies and international organisations, must be accompanied by the most recent audit report produced by an external auditor. When planning your project, remember that each project financed by the EU is entitled to receive only one grant from the EU budget to any one beneficiary. In cases where organisations are also receiving funding from other sources to deliver similar activities, it is the responsibility of the applicant to ensure they remain compliant with the relevant funding rules, including those in relation to double funding, which are detailed in Part C of the programme guide. Finally, where the same or very similar applications are submitted by different applicants or consortiums, they will be subject to a particular assessment and may be all rejected. All applications must be unique to the organisations and participants involved in the project. Erasmus Plus national agencies will be validating your organisation and your partner organisations. This is a separate process to the assessment of your application. Therefore, the fact that your organisation has been validated does not automatically imply a successful outcome for your application. During the validation process, the UK National Agency will check whether all the information you have put into the organisational platform is complete and correct. We will check whether the required legal and financial forms have been uploaded, as well as any of the necessary supporting documents. More information about this can be found in Part C of the programme guide, starting on page 249. Your UK consortium partners will also need to be validated by the UK National Agency. Please therefore ensure that your partners have uploaded all of the necessary documents to the organisation platform to prevent delays to the process. Please note that organisations that are not valid cannot take part in Erasmus Plus funded projects. If you or your partners cannot provide the correct and fully completed documents during the validation process, there may be significant delays to the processing of your application, and the national agency may even have to withdraw its offer of funding if your application is successful. There's no maximum budget for Key Action 1 VET mobility projects. However, the budget requested must be realistic and well justified within the application. We would like to ensure that you are clear about the budget section, therefore this slide contains some repetition. Some key points to remember about the budget. They are unit cost contributions and actual cost contributions. With unit costs, the funding is automatically calculated depending on the unit. This can be the number of participants for a certain duration or a set cost per distance travelled, for example. Budget headings using unit costs are travel, organizational support, individual support, and linguistic support where eligible, as we've seen. Funding for actual costs is based on the real cost of the item or service, but only a certain percentage of the cost will be covered. Budget headings using actual costs are special needs support up to 100% and exceptional costs. For exceptional costs, a percentage of the actual total cost will be funded via the Erasmus Plus budget depending on the cost. The percentages and more information can be found on page 61 of the 2020 Programme Guide. It is important to note that any request for financial support to cover special needs support and exceptional costs must be clearly explained in the application form. The assessor will not assume anything in relation to these costs and can recommend cutting them from the budget unless adequately justified. So before we conclude, some key points for you to remember. Before and while you complete your application, refer to the Commission's documents. First of all, the 2020 Programme Guide and the National Agency's Guide for Applicants and other guidance documents as available on our website. If you have applied before, don't forget to review the feedback you have received from us, as this will include key areas of improvement which will enhance your chance of submitting a good quality application. Remember that Key Action 1 wet funding is a competitive process and you should therefore look to improve your application on an annual basis. Check your internet connection frequently so the form automatically saves and no information is lost. Ensure correct options are selected on the application so that important sections are not deleted. As we've said while looking through the application form, double check that the budget you request is accurate and well justified. Provide relevant answers to the questions in the application, but remember that there is a character limit on many of the sections. You can see the limit underneath each answer box. Get someone else to proofread your application and annexes, perhaps against the published award criteria. Leave enough time for completing and submitting your application before the deadline of the 5th of February 2020 at 11 a.m. UK time. So to conclude, I'd like to remind you of the support the UK National Agency will be offering in the run-up to the 5th of February deadline for applications to be submitted under Key Action 1, Vocational Education and Training. A detailed guide for applicants on how to fill out and submit the application form is available on our Erasmus Plus website. There is a guide for each action type we manage, so make sure you check you have the correct one. You can find this in the Apply for Funding section of our website. We have created a guide to refer to when registering your organization on the new organization platform. It is also useful if you want to know more about the new organization identification codes which have replaced PICs in recent months. This guide can be found using the web page on this slide. If you haven't done so already, please sign up to our newsletter online, as this provides all the most up-to-date information about the 2020 call and the Erasmus Plus programme. On our website, you can also find other important information and key documents to support you with completing your application. We also have a helpline where our team is available to answer your questions about your Key Action 1 application via phone or email. For further information on Brexit and how this impacts the Erasmus Plus programme, please visit the Brexit page on our website, which is listed on this slide. The team is available every day from Monday to Friday to answer any queries you may have via the Erasmus Plus inbox or our helpline number, details for which are on the screen. Do also keep an eye on the Erasmus Plus website for news and further guidance. We hope you found this session useful today, and we wish you luck with your future applications.